What about just the basic violations of freedom? Like, I know that in recent years, Canadian guns have been taken away. And I'm not just talking about assault rifles, right? Like, you're not allowed to even have a handgun in Canada anymore. Is that right?
That's been that way for a long time. So I took the firearm course a couple years ago now, and I got my license because I wanted to know what it was about. But I got my license for unrestricted firearms, which can only be long arms. Small arms are restricted. They've been restricted for, if it's not a half decade, it's close to a decade.
Okay.
Small arms you have to have a special license to get. You can't have them for self-defense. You can only have them if you're sport shooting, if you're, involved in athletics or whatever, competition. You cannot have them or even long arms for self-defense. And there's maybe some very limited exceptions where if you absolutely need it because you're a criminal lawyer with the mob after you, whatever. But to get that, it's a specific license to own a small arm. The unrestricted, I took a 2-day course, passed a test, had a background check, had to have my wife sign off that she's okay with, having a
Everybody
firearm.
approved.
Everybody approved, and that's only good for 5 years. So if you don't get along with your wife in 5 years, you're not getting your renewal. They've been heavily restricted for a very long time. Pandemic comes, you have the Nova Scotia shooting, which oddly enough, nobody talks about it, was committed with unlawfully procured firearms. It's not like the existing laws didn't work. And then Trudeau comes in under the darkness of the pandemic with what's called an order in council, because the legislation allowed for him to amend it and make new regulations without having to go through the legislative process again, just slaps on 1,500 different types of firearms. They call assault rifles, which doesn't mean anything. I'm not a firearm expert, but assault rifle is not a thing. It's a look. We've always been limited to, I think with long arms, it's 5 rounds per magazine. So we've already had restrictions up the wazoo. But because gun crime is still increasing, it's not just still exists, it's going up more than it's going up radically.
Even with all the laws.
Even with all of it, because it's not committed with lawfully procured firearms. The dude who does a 2-day course and has a license.
It's the criminals who actually
black
do
market
it.
Guns coming from the States and coming from further south. So all of the laws are useless. But there's no crisis that's too small for the government to exploit to further expand its powers and limit the rights of the citizens. That's been like that for a long time. We, as Canadians, have no right to self-defense. Can't have pepper spray, can't have tasers, can't have anything designed to be a weapon of self-defense. If you're walking around downtown with a baseball bat, unless you have a glove and a ball, that's borderline. We've been stripped of fundamental rights for a long time in Canada. People don't seem to care because it's relatively safe, unless you live in Toronto, Montreal, or Vancouver. Or you live in Nova Scotia, where a guy goes on a killing spree for 24 hours in an RCMP car. And then in order to deal with that crisis, they take away more rights of law-abiding citizens. The fascinating thing is why Canadians don't care and why they think a government that has historically been incompetent, corrupt, immoral, and genocidal, because they do refer to prior governments as genocidal, why they think the current government would be any better in protecting their rights currently than past governments have been at violating your rights systematically.
Right, and why are they giving them even more power, right? If you're disappointed with the government, why would you give more power to the government? I'm glad you said that about Canadians, because I didn't want to be offensive to Canadians listening, but here I go and I'm saying it. It does come across like Canadians overall are just complacent.